Now, what the Dallas Cowboys need to do, specifically this front office, is step back and let Brian Schottenheimer spearhead this search for a new defensive coordinator. Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome on into the Space Cowboy Show. I'm your host, Ricardo, and we have to dive into breaking news as the Dallas Cowboys have fired defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus. This doesn't come at any surprise whatsoever. If you have been following the Cowboys in 2025, you are very well aware of the fact that he coached himself out of his job. When you have 9 games where you have your opponent score 30 plus points and you play 17 games, that is a big red flag. This was one of the worst defenses, not in just Cowboys history, but in NFL history, giving up 500 points this season. And on top of that, even with adding new personnel and even trying to experiment what to do with that personnel, he clearly had no idea what he was doing. We thought that we were getting a guy that maybe if you gave him the ingredients like he did when he was in Indianapolis, that maybe, just maybe, you can have a guy that can make you have a productive defense. And that's something that we didn't get whatsoever. Now, the Dallas Cowboys, thank goodness, let him go to allow themselves to start searching for a new defensive coordinator prior to the beginning of the playoffs. Because, as you know, there are deadlines that are coming up to where you can start interviewing particular candidates. And we know that the Cowboys like to take their time with their evaluations, which I don't know what there was to evaluate, if there was any, but I'm very glad that they didn't take their time and they just pressed the fire button, and now you move on to a defensive coordinator search. I did say that I would rather be in a situation where we're looking for another defensive coordinator than retaining a bad one just for the sake of having a defensive coordinator stick around for stability. You can't have that, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the players were just checked out when it came to what Matt Eberflus was trying to do. Look, you can't tell me that you adding a guy like Quinnen Williams and you throw in a couple other pieces from injury returning and you can't make this even look like a decent defense, a below average, not terrible defense. So again, I'm not surprised that Matt Eberflus was canned, and you shouldn't be either. Now, what the Dallas Cowboys need to do, specifically this front office, is step back and let Brian Schottenheimer spearhead this search for a new defensive coordinator. I'm sick and tired of the front office putting the cart before the horse, where we're trying to figure out who the head coach is going to be, but you already have the defensive coordinator or even the offensive coordinator already decided for the next coach, and there's no cohesion as to having the coaching staff all together and in alignment. We saw this when you hired Matt Eberflus with Brian Schottenheimer because you wanted Matt Eberflus to be the DC before you even knew who you were going to have as a head coach. You can go back to when Mike McCarthy was hired. They wanted Kellen Moore to remain the offensive coordinator regardless of the head coach, and Mike McCarthy went along with it. And then you ended up going back and you look at when you got Jason Garrett and Wade Phillips. You hired Jason Garrett as the offensive coordinator prior to having Wade Phillips become the head coach. This is not a proper way to build cohesion with your coaching staff, and also it can create tension if they don't agree with what they're trying to build philosophically. So again, the Cowboys need to let Brian Schottenheimer do his thing and build the staff how he wants it. Because now, this puts all the pressure on Brian Schottenheimer to do his job as best as he can, and all of the blame will be fixated on him if he fails. Again, I give a lot of crap to the front office, but it's very hard to really look at what's going on if you can't properly evaluate what's going on with this football team, because the front office makes so many damn mistakes. Like, how am I supposed to know what type of culture Brian Schottenheimer is trying to build if this front office is not allowing him to fully construct the coaching staff that he wants it? I said the same thing with Mike McCarthy, and I said the same thing with Wade Phillips and even Jason Garrett. If you are not allowing your coaching staff to be built in the manner that the head coach wants, we can't fully evaluate them. And then this also causes problems down the road. Now, when we talk about what names you should keep an eye out on for replacing Matt Eberflus and guys that I think I'd be very acceptable with having here in the building to make this defense respectable again, there are a couple that come to mind. The number one name is Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator from the Minnesota Vikings. His contract expires, hence why his name is coming up. And I think that if he's trying to get back into becoming a head coach, he would probably want to look at taking this Cowboys job. They wouldn't have any issues giving him the money. And also, you being in a spotlight such as the Dallas Cowboys, you'll get to have everyone looking at you and be like, okay, can you make this defense respectable? And if you can, I'm pretty sure that that's going to end up putting you in a position where you'll get a lot of head coaching offers. And I do believe that that should be the number one target for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, after Black Monday, you had two head coaches that you might want to keep an eye out on or possibly look at, and those are Raheem Morris and Jonathan Gannon, guys that have experience on the defensive side of the ball, that have shown that when you give them the talent, they can make things work. Now, for me, I would be more preferable to have Jonathan Gannon, as we saw what he did with the Philadelphia Eagles during their Super Bowl run back in 2022, and I think that that would be something that you can look at if you're trying to go down that route. And him having the connections with Clayton Adams definitely helps as well. Another guy that I'm extremely high on that you guys should keep an eye out on is Jim Leonhard, the guy from Denver. He is their assistant head coach and their passing game coordinator. I've talked about him being an option for the Cowboys for a long time. And I think that given how he's on the younger side, he's a part of a Broncos defense that's done very well this year, and coming from the Sean Payton tree, which I'm high about, I think that the Cowboys should look to go after him if those other options fail. Now, you do have some other guys like Jim Schwartz maybe you can look to go after if you're trying to get a more experienced guy. I do think that some of the names you want to circle in on are Jim Leonhard, Jonathan Gannon, Brian Flores. Those are the three names that I'm thinking that you want to look at as the Cowboys are conducting this search. I wouldn't be shocked if any of those guys became the next defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys. What they cannot do is they cannot rush into a decision. As I'm making this video, they cannot rush themselves into saying this is the guy that we want, and they don't conduct a proper search. They should be looking everywhere. There are no rush, and they shouldn't be afraid to go after the big fish in the pond to get this defense back on track. We've seen that the offense is fine. If you can get the defense just even middle of the pack, I think that you might have something cooking here in Dallas with Brian Schottenheimer. Otherwise, you are pretty much stuck in mud at this point. But I want to hear what you guys have to say. Who should the Cowboys hire as their next defensive coordinator? Do you have any other options that maybe I didn't bring up or anything like that? Please let me know in the comments section below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.